Well, good afternoon, or good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming in as we open up the webinar today for this event as part of Alaska Startup Week. I want to welcome you, for those listening in and for any of those watching the recording afterwards. As you sign in and listen in the background, we have 4 speakers here today, along with 2 of us from the CenterIce team. So any questions that you might have for these individuals, then please bring those up in the Q&A tool that you will be seeing in the webinar, and you'll be able to we'll make sure that those questions are brought forward to the attendees. And then anybody listening online afterward, please reach out to us at CenterIce, and we'll be able to follow up with any of the presenters and any of the information that you hear. So if we then move on to the event. So today we're here as part of Alaska Startup Week. We're in day 2, Tuesday morning, and this is a week-long celebration of innovation and entrepreneurship in the state of Alaska, whether they be in-person open houses, virtual information events like this, online or hybrid events. It's really to celebrate the types of work that's going on in the state and those researchers connected to the state of Alaska, and to highlight the work that they've done and maybe pass on some lessons learned, some tips and tricks about the ways that they've moved forward with their innovative research and their business development. It's part of a whole week, starting yesterday all the way through to Friday. Ourselves at CenterIce are based at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. We at the Trothieta campus are on the native lands of the Dene people of the lower Tanana River. So wherever you are, both in Fairbanks and across the state and across the country, we respect the native lands upon which we all reside wherever we are based. So ourselves at CenterIce are here to support innovators and entrepreneurs, just like the ones you're hearing from today. And then for all of you coming in online, please do reach out to us, whether it be connecting to this university, or if you're inside the university, the type of funding, space and networking that we at CenterIce, myself, Ashley, and our team provide. So all being well, you've signed in today to hear about the CenterIce Seed Fund and innovations that have been going on across the University of Alaska and across the University of Alaska Fairbanks, which the majority of the individuals are here today. If you're part of the university system, the Seed Fund is open for opportunities. So if you have an innovative project or an innovative idea and you're looking for some seed or some nudge funding to be able to move your idea forwards, getting it closer to commercial readiness, or even just moving it along a technology readiness level to build a broader impact opportunity for the community or for a local business, please do reach out. And if you're external to the university, we have ways to find and connect you with researchers that could help you work on your solution and your technology development. We have 2 moderators, myself and Ashley Guernsey, who's the Innovations Fellow within CenterIce. And then we have 4 very interesting and captivating speakers here today, each of them who have received seed funding to support their research, support their educational mission and the values of their organization and their group. And we'll be hearing and discussing with them more on their project. In a second, I'll be passing it over to each to introduce themselves and the work that we supported, and then we'll have a discussion focused around some important topics that will hopefully drive some questions from the audience. So on that note, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to the discussion section and have the first one and do the sort of pass the popcorn type of approach. So on my Celebrity Squares setup, I have Adam Lau first. So I'll maybe pass it over to Adam to do a brief introduction to sort of how the Seed Fund supported his entrepreneurial journey and his group. So over to you, Adam.
Thank you very much, Peter, and welcome to everybody who is joining us today. As Peter said, my name is Adam Lau. I serve as the director for the Upward Bound program at University of Alaska Fairbanks and the Teaching Through Technology, or T3 Alliance program lead. And so you have a little context. Upward Bound is a federally funded program that helps underserved high school students find a pathway into a post-secondary career of some sort. And we utilize technology, maker spaces and the like to get students integrated with community projects, doing meaningful work that they can apply and make a difference in those ways. In 2019, the UAF makerspace developed during our COVID year. We had students who weren't able to fly anymore, so we invested in building makerspaces around Alaska, and we built a hub makerspace at the University of Alaska Fairbanks with a lot of the equipment that we used for that program. It quickly became apparent that there were students at UAF and students at other sites around Alaska who wanted to come in and do projects and build projects. And that's where the seed fund from Center Ice really became a game changer for us. Center Ice provided around $13,000 in mini grant funds that students are able to learn to use all the different technologies, learn the design thinking process, and eventually boil it down to, I have a request for a small mini grant for a project. We could internally approve and decline those requests. So most cases it was a process of bringing those students who had never written any kind of a grant before up to, I wrote a grant and I'm turning it in, and it is becoming something I'm really proud of. I'm working with a team, I'm working with a community partner, and I'd say that we have grown since that point to where we now have classes at the university, including the introductory engineering course, that have built their curriculum around the makerspace and around the opportunity to partner with the seed fund and have hands-on student-driven problem-based learning that's supported with mini grant funds as a part of that paradigm. So that's kind of my introduction and where we really appreciate the seed fund and its contribution to what work we've done with the makerspace.
Thanks for that, Adam, and thanks for that sort of highlight of how the makerspace has grown and where sort of early stage funding can be really beneficial to just tweak the interest, but also support those in terms of how to actually apply for projects so they can then go on to larger opportunities as they expand their ideas. Next, we have Bahara Baradi, who received some seed funding as part of her research while she was connected with the university. So I'll pass it over to Bahara to talk about her project and how it helped her accelerate her prototype design.
Okay, thank you, Peter, and hello, everyone. My name is Bahara Baradi, and my background is in biomedical engineering. I joined UAF in 2013. I started my postdoc at Dr. Kelly Drew's lab, and there I, got introduced to this, startup world because Dr. Drew was also owner of a biotech startup. I had some ideas about improving tools that we use for animal studies. My main focus was stroke models in small lab animals. And I had some ideas of miniaturized optical imaging instruments to be used for improving animal studies. And Center Ice, at that time, I think I was one of the first awardees of Center Ice seed funding, helped me to build a prototype in collaboration with my colleagues at Drexel University in Philadelphia. So that prototype we used to do some preliminary studies, and then we submitted an SBIR grant, Small Business Innovation Research Grant, to NIH, which was funded. And so I think that first seed funding was really instrumental to the success of my project, because otherwise I had no money to build the prototype or do any animal testing. And we got the SBIR and we started doing some cool projects with collaborators at University of Pittsburgh. We did some studies at UAF also. And then there was a point that we realized that we need to pivot to another market, because the research market for stroke and neurological disorders was small. And I may later talk about our experience at I-Corp. But through I-Corp, we realized that there is a kind of like more interesting market for us, which was the veterinary medicine. And but unfortunately, at that point, we had run out of fund. And we reached out to Center Ice again, and we got another seed funding to build another prototype, a much improved one in collaboration with Mr. Jeffrey Rothman at electronic shop at GI. And so that prototype was also used for another set of experiments at Stanford University, which we used to submit another SBIR to STTR, actually this time to NIH, which was reviewed just recently and was scored. So we are hopeful that we may get that also funded. So I think that for in my case, where I needed seed funding for building the prototype and generate some preliminary data, seed funding was really, really helpful and crucial. Otherwise, I don't know, like, we could have sought for an angel investment, but since it was very early stage, and the de-risking part was also like, the very first step, that you need to de-risk your project before you can reach out to angel investment. So I think that seed funding is really appropriate for earlier stage projects before you have some data that you can present to external or venture funds and get some more money to come in. So I'm really grateful for the opportunity that Centerize provided.
Thanks, Bahare. And thank you for highlighting that sort of aim that a seed fund provides. That it is that early stage idea where you even went through the pivot and you were looking at a new market and were able to come back and applied, and we reviewed it and followed the same process as if we were reviewing a similar proposal from Cherry or Kelly or from Adam, and then we were able to approve and support that work. But also you had the original idea working in Dr. Drew's lab, and that was like, well, where do I go to be able to get some seed support to be able to really test that new idea that maybe is slightly outside some of the other funding that you have, and that's really how a seed fund can be very beneficial. So anybody listening, that's an idea where you might have a new idea outside your own work, and you might be like, well, how do I get some support to really just test and evaluate if this is something that we want to move forwards with? And that's where a seed fund opportunity can arise. I'm going to go over to Professor Drew to talk about hers, and then I'll come round to Dr. Amnazor and her project work in the mariculture industry. So over to Professor Drew.
There we go. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, it's really a pleasure to be able to speak to how the seed funds have helped us. So I'm the founder of Be Cool Pharmaceutics, that is a spinoff from my research in hibernation. I also direct a center here that's focused on hibernation. So there's just a wealth of basic science discoveries with potential application that I'm excited to have opportunities to move forward. And for me, there's been so much infrastructure support moving forward. I think it was even before Centerice that got us all writing SBIR grants, and I got one funded and got us a good start, but along the way there have been some hurdles, bridge money or additional resources that we need to cross the T or dot the I. Most recently we had some funding from University of Washington Institute for Translational Health Sciences, which had a commercialization focus, and that fund wasn't enough to pay for analysis that we needed to complete the project, and Centerice we got a seed fund to do that, and that work now is ongoing at UAA. So it's exciting that it's expanded our scope in developing infrastructure statewide. It's going very well, and those data will certainly contribute to our next STTR application, which is due in January. So it is just a matter of holding the pieces together, moving forward, de-risking to the point where we could recruit and get venture capital or angel investors. So there's just so much de-risking to do, because that's what it's all about. So I really appreciate the seed funding.
Thanks back to Kelly, and I think they're highlighting that while Bahar's initial ideas were sort of like, how do I move something new forwards? What you're doing there is you're seeing how could a seeds fund supplement something that you're already doing and add on and provide some additional data, some additional capabilities that build up the evidence-based data that shows what you're doing has value and therefore can have a broader impact across multiple different industries, and therefore you've got some demonstration of data sets that you can provide to the next step of your development and your journey, and therefore they've seen that there's data behind the information that you're trying to portray, and often that then shows that there's a lower risk for the investment or the funding that you're looking for from the next stage, which would be a scale up in what's possible from a seed fund. But sometimes you need that seed fund to get that data, and it's how do you do that? And that's where something like a seed fund that gives you the availability to access that outside some of your existing work, but supplementing it can be very beneficial, not just a completely new idea from the ground up.
Yeah.
Perfect, great. Well, thanks for that, Kelly. And then finally, from our panelists today, we have Dr. Umnazor at University of Alaska Fairbanks, based down in Juneau. So I'll pass it over to Sherry to talk about how the seed fund has helped her in developing the kit system that she has built out for the mariculture industry. So over to you, Sherry.
Thank you, Peter, and welcome everyone. So I am the mariculture faculty for the university system right now. So my job is to help advance mariculture pretty much in the state. So mariculture for now is restricted to shellfish and seaweeds only, and I'm mostly focused on seaweeds. And as mariculture gains momentum, not only in the state but nationwide, there tends to be some generalization that any place in the ocean is good for growing things, in this case seaweeds. But it turns out that Alaska is so different than anyone else in the state that there are many challenges when trying to select a good place to set a farm. And despite what you might read in the web, farming is expensive, especially when you are starting. You have to consider anchors, you have to consider transportation, you have to consider all of the system that is going to hold the farm in place. So I was continuously asked, what is a good place to set a farm? And although I can list a whole bunch of parameters that farmers can look for, if you're not very familiarized with biological parameters of kelp, it's very hard to tell what is good light, what is low light. How do you know what nutrient is here or what is missing? So I came out with this idea, what if I create a kit that has all of the devices necessary in a booklet that explains step by step, why do you need to measure this parameter and what number do you need to get, pretty much. So if it's X number, then it's good. If it's another number, it isn't good, and then you move to the next site. So this is really what I, started thinking about. But one of the challenges whenever you are applying, or at least this has only happened to me, I would like to hear this from the other panelists, when you try to frame something that will have perhaps more of a regional than a nationwide effect, there turns to be this is too Alaska-centric project, and it's very hard to get funding if the impact is not going to be nationwide, at least like right away. And this is when centralized funding came handy, because yes, I'm going to develop this kit first for farmers in the state of Alaska, and then we can adapt the kit for other regions. So really the seed funds pretty much funded the entire project from beginning to end. So conceptualizing, testing different materials, assembling. And then I have to mention that it was very successful because I partnered with a group of farmers, the Native Conservancy, and they tested the kit. So I have the idea, I thought it was gonna work, but then they tested, and then they say, no, this is not good, or I'm not understanding this, or can we zoom in because I don't understand your instructions. So it was an entire year of going back and forth and modifying the kit until it came to a final product. The product was licensed by a company in California. So in theory, it should be available for everyone now. And now it's adaptable. Now that it's a final product, it's easier to adapt it to different regional conditions, not only for the state. So that's my story in a nutshell. So I appreciate the seed funds because it really opened the opportunity to create an entire product from beginning to end.
Great, thanks for that, Shay. And I think that sort of goes back to there's these terms that people use called technical readiness levels and commercial readiness levels, and often you're moving something sometimes from lab to market. So you're going from what's known as level 4 to like level 7 or 8, where you're moving your technology ready and actually getting it out into the field and analyzing it. But also there is that 0 to 4, where you're basically taking the initial idea and going forward and building the prototype. So I think what you highlighted there is you can go the full journey from you're hearing from a need from the community. You've got an idea of what the solution that would be able to do that. You've developed and built one. You've gone out there, you've tested it, you've evaluated it with an external partner. They've come back, told you, hey, you need to tweak this here, tweak that there, and you've edited and iterated upon that. And then you've come up with a readiness level product that can go out into the community. And then you found a partner to help commercialize and transition that beyond the region into, first of all, the Pacific Northwest, and then across the nation, and who knows, across the globe. So you've gone the full journey from the 0 readiness level of like, hey, we've got this idea that we need this kit, all the way to something that's ready to go and available into the community, whether that community be a business or a location and an actual city or village or town. So it's interesting to hear from all of you that you're all different stages of development of how the seed fund has helped, from initial idea all the way through to training those early stage entrepreneurs on that process of that iterative idea development, as Adam's been doing with the small mini grants, to Bahara's project idea, where she wanted to go from an initial new idea forwards and then pivoted and came back, and Kelly that's adding and supplementing on existing ones where you're already at a particular development stage. So the reason why we brought everybody together is you're all at different stages in the journey, and all at moving things forward at different starting points. And I wanted to demonstrate that the seed fund opportunity that we have, and seed funds in general in an academic setting, don't have to be the initial 0 idea to the final. They can be at different stages along the way. So as we see, we've got some questions here, and I guess one of my first questions to everybody is, as you were going through this, once you were awarded and successful and had been reviewed by us, what were some of did you have any challenges or hurdles that you came up against in doing your work, where you had to maybe change your idea along the way? Maybe I'll start with Adam with some of the mini grants that they worked upon. How did the students sort of, initially they proposed an idea which can change as you test. You start with an idea and you propose an idea, but who knows how it's going to adapt and develop. Were there any challenges or hurdles that the student teams came upon as they were going through that, based on what they wrote in their original mini grant?
Thanks, Peter. And I do want to just build on to what you just mentioned there. The power that I see in this panel here is in part the fact that, the students that I'm working with at the beginning phase of like asking some questions, listening to their community, starting to design up solutions that are beginning, that are messy, that they think they understand something, they're going to ask some questions, apply for it. They can lead to the kinds of things that Sitchery and all of you guys are talking about. And I think that pipeline is what's really important to remember. When I speak about challenges, that is absolutely the learning moment that I'm able to curate with them writing a mini grant. It's rare that a mini grant is just, here, I'm going to build a kit and it work exactly perfectly the first time. They'll get the stuff after they make their proposal and they promise and have deliverables and what kind of data they're going to collect, which is a learning moment, just period right there. But when all that stuff comes together and there's a team of students scratching their head trying to actually put it together, stay connected with the person that they've empathized with, stay connected with that community partner who hopefully they're solving that problem for that community partner. That brings about this cycle of, what do we do, how do we fix this? How do we adapt to make this change? And really, holding a space in that maker space where it's not a finger wagging, you darn it, you didn't do it fast enough or the right way, or you got a bad grade. It's not the perfection, it's the struggle that they go through and how they respond to the setbacks that come, that we are able to work on with the support of the seed funding. Now, I'd say, is there something that as a program we have struggled with? It's that there are many, many mini grants written, and keeping track of all of the orders that go out and all of the money that comes back in and all of the deliverables and the different accounting aspects of it. That's a challenge for both us and for the students who are going through things. We want to build fast and make stuff, but there's that other side of any grant management project or any business, which is the accounting side. So, I think as we grow, those are the areas that we're starting to build the structures that make those kind of things be easier to be linear going forward. But in terms of, for students, just making sure that they have a clear roadmap, that this is what the process is going to be like of innovation. This is what the process is going to be like to really go into a project where you can promise what you'll deliver, in terms of analyzing the data, but you may not know how it'll all collect together, or what, if the battery you put into your data collector doesn't work at 40 below, oh no, now we have a whole new set of problems. And it's been nice that we have enough flexibility where they can go back and ask for a modification of their original grant to say, I need to go and solve this problem I didn't anticipate. But that to me, when they come out of this program, then they're ready to really say, all right, I'm ready for the next level of something. And that's the pipeline that I'm excited about, empowering here.
Great, thanks for that, Adam. That's the sort of thing that where it's a journey, not only in the project development, but the actual research, the work that's going on. And while we review your submissions for the seed fund and evaluate, okay, this is what you're looking to do across 6 months, a few months, a year, whatever the length of the project is, we know that there's going to be changes, there's going to be iterations, there's going to be developments. So as a program, working with whoever is the lead awardee, and then them being aware of, okay, there's going to be a change here, or we propose to do this piece of equipment, but now there's something else that's out there that can help us move further forwards. It's the iterative interaction between us as the supporters and the individuals on the project, that it's not sort of like a one and done, hey, you're awarded and we'll see you at the last day of the award and here's your report. It really is an interactive process going forwards. And maybe I'll pass over to Bahara, where you were working with Jeff in the Geophysical Institute machine shop, and sort of how did that go with Jeff as a engineer that traditionally developed infrasound sensors, and then he's working with you on your engineering need and design. How did that go in terms of sort of interactively iterating upon your design with Jeff, who is working potentially in a new field for him, but using his electronic engineering skills?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And for that also, I should thank Kelly, because she introduced me to Jeff. I don't know if you remember, Kelly, but I think that you had some technical question and you ran to Jeff and then you said you should talk to him. And I did. And I'm so glad we made that connection, because he's wonderful. So one thing that I would like to add to what just Adam mentioned. So a lot of times I think that, we as, entrepreneurs, we think too much about the features of our device or technology that we are envisioning, that we lose the point of what's the point of making a prototype. The point is just to build, measure, and learn. You should just build something so basic and simple, but keeping that in mind, that you will iterate, you will go through several cycles of iterations. But the first step is to just build an MVP that you could do some tests with, and then learn how to do the next phase. And that piece, I think that a lot of us miss at the beginning. And that's the mistake that I did. But I'm glad I met with Jeff, because from the early, conversations, he said that, you know what, let's forget about a lot of features that you currently have. Some of them work relatively okay, some of them don't, and they are just causing a lot of problem. So let's just focus on something very old-fashioned, basic, but robust, that we know that we can get, decent measurements with, and then we will, go from there. And being a, senior engineer, old-fashioned as he describes himself, he started building some prototypes for us that we could do some very basic tests in animals and get robust data, which is very important, right? Because if you think about your final product for the prototype, you think about the features that you want to see in your final product, then you will miss the point of getting good data because you are too stuck with the features. For example, like in our case, we wanted to have a wireless device. And a wireless device means that you should think about the wireless communication. You should think about the battery, because that's a big challenge for doing a long-term measurements. But you miss the point that first you need to see if your device is working given the circumstances for that model, for that experiment. And so, yeah, working with Jeff helped us to just, go one step back, start building robust prototypes, which may not seem very nice, but they help us collect the good data. And then as you learn more about the technology, the problem you're working on, and you show feasibility, then you can go from there. You can add to your prototype and see what features your customers, need to have. It's like, when we participated in NIH customer discovery training, we realized that, researchers, a lot of them really don't care about the wireless feature. They do care about a non-invasive device, but really they don't care much about wireless feature because they want to do the measurements in animals that are anesthetized already. So it really doesn't matter if it's wired or wireless. So then it's good not to spend a lot of time and money on some features that you think is very cool, but keep your focus on something that your customers really need. I think that that's very important.
Thanks for that, Bahari. Yeah, I think the minimum viable product, sort of getting something out there and testing it, you'll tweak the design, it maybe need to be smaller or slightly less heavy, or you find a feature that you didn't think was going to be really needed, and then you add it in, and you're not investing potentially all the efforts into something that is a nice to have or not needed versus a must have aspect of your tool. And you were working with Jeff inside the university on that. So I wonder, Sherry, when you mentioned that you worked with the Nature Conservancy as an external organization on your kit development, how did that go in terms of that collaboration and the iterative process where you're having them do some of that external assessment and then coming back to you as somebody inside the university? How did that work? One, how did you find the partnership? And then two, how did it work with them testing some of the developments of the kit?
Those are great questions. And before going to that answer, I want to bring back two words that Adam and Bahari mentioned. So one is simplicity, and this will follow up with my answer. So simplicity is super important. You don't need to construct something that is going to be like maybe super trendy, or doesn't even need to look nice, but it has to be useful and it has to solve a problem. And the other one is iteration, right? You have to go back and forth, improve and improve, because you never know when that battery is not going to work. So with the Native Conservancy, I think it was a very straightforward relationship. Like our conversation started just like that. Like, my kelp is not looking very well. So then I start asking, so where are you farming and what are the conditions? And we started like figuring out how can we make this, how can we find a simple solution? And here is another very important part, that is cost effective. So you can do a very high-tech site suitability assessment where a simple device can cost you $15,000, just one, to measure one parameter. Now, is that going to give us a good answer? Of course, it's going to give us a good answer. Do we need a perfect answer? no, we don't. What we need to have is a yes or a no. So it came, in a conversation of what is giving me the answer that I want and what is the lowest cost. So when we started building these together, I asked them, do you think this is a device that is easy enough to use? Will you be able to, understand these instructions? And then they'll say, not really. Or yes, I know how to do this because I already have all of this background. But if I'm trying to teach someone else how to use it, this other person is not going to understand how to use it. Can we look for something else? So it's a very iterative process in which we were looking at different devices and trying to see which one will actually give us the answer that we were looking for, but was cost effective and was easy to use. So it was like checking boxes. And if those boxes didn't check, then we just remove that item and bring the next one. That's kind of how it went.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for that. And I think what you're doing there is you're doing your stakeholder or customer discovery in real time as you develop your device and your stakeholder, ensuring that you're building towards their need and their pains that they're having, but making it effective so it's not too expensive that it can't be used by the individual farmers, but then not too simplistic, so it doesn't provide the most useful data that can actually give them, as you say, the yes and no answer that they want. So you're moving towards a final product that is a must-have piece of kit rather than a nice to have, but we're now going to put it on the shelf because it's not actually useful, and it becomes something that gathers dust behind the person doing the work rather than actually something they can take out and use. So on that question, maybe I'll pass over to Kelly and sort of in the sort of stakeholder discovery phase that comes from many of the federal agencies, whether it be NIH, NSF and such in terms of this innovation core sort of assessment and building out understanding your customer segments. How effective is it to do that ahead of a design of a product or some research versus doing that afterwards? Do you think it's something where you want to go and do your stakeholder discovery in real time beforehand? How do you think the stakeholder discovery, understanding the need of the community that you want to develop into is critical as you're going into this? Oh, I've got a seed of this idea. I want to go and do some research and development on it. But you'd want to do the chicken and the egg type of thing, develop it, and then you'll find the market versus let's go and find the market and then develop into the market. And you're muted, Kelly.
Yeah, so I definitely think that it's important to understand the need, if not the market. It's best to understand both before you move forward. So, for me, I understood the need because I had been in the area of basic research for such a long time. And so when I did participate in I-Corps, it just confirmed that I understood the need because, like I said, I'd been doing research in this area for a long time. I didn't learn a lot from I-Corps, but what happened through the I-Corps process and customer discovery is that I made contacts and I identified who the end users would be. So before I really didn't understand, I knew it was going to be a new drug that would have medical applications, but I didn't know that it was going to be ICU physicians and ER doctors. And so and it was really fun because through the I-Corps program, I met these physicians who actually was familiar with my basic science research. And so this became important when our primary indication, which was cardiac arrest, hit a big barrier because of a recent clinical trial that showed that such an approach after cardiac arrest was not helpful, despite being used for a long time, like decades. And so knowing these physicians and being in contact with them gave me the insights on where to pivot, so we went from cooling to fever management. And so absolutely being aware of what the need is and the market is actually really important because what I found after the fact, I didn't really know ahead of time, but we had a very small market. And for a drug, that's not necessarily a dead end because you can apply for orphan status for drugs, which is valuable, but it's important to be aware of. And so moving in a direction where there is no market is not going to go. So you do need to understand your market and how to optimize access to that market.
Well, yeah, thanks for that. And as I said, we have later in the week another panel focused on iCore and the benefit that people have gone through in the customer discovery. But I wanted to bring up that discussion topic on the sort of stakeholder discovery and the customer discovery because of some of the comments that Bahar and Sherry were making about how you're interacting and developing that understanding of where you're building your solution into as you're going through it. And sometimes you want to develop an innovative solution, but you wanted to be developing it towards an opportunity where someone's going to actually want it as a must-have solution, service, product, whatever it is. And you don't want to be sort of stand off and say, hey, here's my cool seed R&D development. At the end of that product, now I'm going to turn around and go, hey, I've spent X amount of dollars on it. I've spent 6 months on it. Anybody want it? And everybody's like, twiddling their thumbs and quiet space, like, no, thanks, but no thanks. Whereas what you want is sometimes you want it ahead of time to say, oh, right, there's a real need. I need something to develop really quickly. I need a few months, and I'm going to have a group of people knocking the door for this. But you also want to do it in real time. So that's why I wanted to highlight that. But I'll pass the mic back to you to comment.
Well, I was just going to say that's really the fun part of it. Is you get some kind of crazy ideas, but really understanding what other people want and what the need is opens up avenues of creativity that otherwise wouldn't be there.
Exactly. So before I jump into the last question from our side about how can the entrepreneurial community help you all in your projects, is there any questions you individually have for each other now that you've heard a little bit more about the projects that are going on, because we've got a fairly wide range of research areas here, and maybe I'll pass the mic to any of our panelists to ask if they've got any questions of the individuals and the programs and the projects they've heard today. Does anybody have a question for each other, I guess, is the something that I'd like to bring up. So
yeah, I had a question for Adam. I was curious to see if you could share with us any success stories from those students who started new projects. If any of them got to a point that the device is made or is being tested, anything like that.
Yeah, thank you. As an educator, I was a high school science teacher for 18 years before moving into being an administrator here. So I define success in ways that sometimes have to do with the student moving on to continue their educational efforts. And I'd say that some aspect of what we're doing with teaching through technology, this process here that involves makerspaces and technology, has been in process over a number of different National Science Foundation grants and now with the support of the Seed Fund for about 10 years. And we've seen that students who, while they're still in high school, have a chance to be partnering with researchers, doing questions that actually make a difference in their community. That's why I was so excited to hear about the work with checking for mariculture or aquaculture kind of, potential environments, because it's a question that takes their place where they live and makes it connectable to, back to them. And then when they go to college, knowing that the studying that they do still can tie back to a question that makes a difference in their community and might start an industry and things. So we have stories where the students who have gone through our program now, work for Alaska Center for Energy and Power, or they are sought after as interns for programs. In terms of the specific projects that have been funded by these mini grant things going on to the next level, I recognize that is where we need to make sure to carefully curate that handshake moment. And this year, December 7th or 8th or something like that, as all of the students who have been doing mini grants this semester, they have a chance to present to the community. We'll make sure a lot of people are there, but what's important is that this machine of opportunities that Center Ice is providing, everything from the startup accelerator to, the other seed fund kind of opportunities, that students recognize that, hey, this first experience with my mini grant that I did while I was in college, or maybe I did while I was in high school, can lead to further funding if my characteristics are there. And remember, we're started this process here in 2019, have made it through the COVID, and we're just now getting to the point where it's like, okay, that's something we need to tweak. That's something we need to tweak. So what I love about this whole thing is that, we respect it's the innovation process and building of, a pipeline for students to, feel safe when they come from an environment that might be, school is, you do what you're told, or now it's all online and here's the right answer that you can Google, and innovation is not about that. Innovation is, let's try stuff, let's talk about it, let's empathize, let's work with our community members. So, in terms of my definition of success, we have been absolutely successful. I have students who would go anywhere, would work for us and try to be next level participants and presenters and connectors, and they would line up to say, I'm ready for work. But when we hit that commercial success of a product that started here turns into a patent somewhere, or it turns into something like the stories that you guys are sharing, that's like when it'll be, okay, now nationally, we will get the attention that we need. And right now, I feel like what Alaska has as its superpower is the fact that it's not that many degrees of separation between folks who work in Fairbanks, folks who work in, different places, and getting, all of us working around the topic of how do we help youth move into this career field or into this, space. It's doable. And other bigger states with more political stuff are going to look to us as a leader.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for sharing. I think that, some stories, if like, moving some of the projects to the next level would be very inspirational for, the next generation of students coming in, just to see that, what their peers, had worked on previously is now, is making a kind of like, a stronger impact on their community.
Yeah.
But wonderful. Thanks for sharing.
And before I ask if there's any other questions from you all, I think it's the aspect of it. It's a journey in the innovation process on your individual projects, but it's a journey in general. So it's not a one and done interaction with the innovation process, whether you're coming at it as a new researcher to the state, or whether you're transitioning from a high school to university environment, or even if you're transitioning into the private sector. It's how can we as a state, we as a group of individuals, or the organizations we represent, inspire those coming into the process to stay in the process. So those that are in the state stay in the state, that they get the opportunity to work on real world problem sets, that they can see a difference in their community, or for a local business like Professor Drew's or something like that, or with Sherry's, where her kit is now being licensed in California. So there's a cross-state benefit there, that they're seeing somebody outside the state is looking at Sherry and the university as a place to come for technologies that can really develop. And Kelly, I see your hand raised. So rather than me natter on, I'll pass it back to you.
Well, it's just really interesting to try to consider moving forward, what directions are feasible. Like Sherry's is a wonderful example of something that has really been successful, versus other things that hit infrastructure hurdles. And then, and even thinking of student projects, it's not really the point right now. The point right now is for them to have some success of innovation and excitement. But moving forward, how can we keep that spirit alive, and how can we nurture success? Because we have really limited resources and limited infrastructure. And so what is the best way to navigate what is available, and how can we inspire that, or identify other areas to improve infrastructure, but that I think is probably less tenable.
Yeah, that's a very interesting, very. We could have a whole hour debating that aspect of it, and we're all in slightly different areas. But I think all of us, it's the sort of process, or the if we can have programs that can allow individuals to connect into the support mechanisms that we have, whether they're in a mariculture, biological research, whatever it is, then that will allow us all to move forwards together. So infrastructure that can be beneficial to as wide a range of individuals, whether they are first generation students coming into college versus those that have gone through T3 in their high school, or that they are coming in, seeing Alaska as a place to come and move, like Bahara did for her research. Those sort of aspects, all of those need some similar infrastructure to make them happen. And if we can find what that is, whether it is seed funding, whether it is staple opportunities for internship programs that are continuous every year, then we'll actually support all the different groups, irrespective of the industry, the technology, the discipline that they're in. So it sort of doesn't answer the question, what's needed? I think for me, what's often needed is the intellectual person to be the driver for that. And often we get pulled in so many different directions ourselves that we can't dedicate as much time as we want to support these type of things. So I think sometimes it's people power and dedicated individuals that have one sole opportunity to be like these statewide or regional advocates, supporters, change makers. So Bahara's got a hand raised, and I see Adam physical hand raised. So I'll do the virtual first, and then over to Adam with the physical hand. Bahara, do you have a comment?
Okay. So yes. So I mean, this is actually related to your like how the entrepreneurial community can help us move forward, also, and related to Kelly's point. So I think that I had the opportunity to be working with some other startups here in the Seattle area, and also in Boston area. And one thing that I realized, the difference between our community in Alaska and the rest of the country, is that we haven't been exposed to opportunities to be connected to venture capitalists or to serious angel investors. And like, just imagine that COVID proved that we are all interconnected. There is no we still can do a lot of work being in Alaska. We can have subcontractors anywhere in the world. We can do experiments anywhere in the world. We can build our prototype anywhere in the world. But we can still be in Alaska and manage our business from Alaska. So I think that one thing that we need to kind of work on in terms of entrepreneurial culture in Alaska is to be exposed to the external world in terms of VC and seeking for external funding. And I have seen that very basic ideas, not super innovative or super exciting, they get to receive tons of money from from venture capital, because the reason is that those investors are also hungry for novel ideas, for they are seeking for projects, and there are now very focused financial groups and venture groups that are, for example, for Kelly's case, there are people interested in drugs for neurological disorders, and these are people from physician clinicians or from Silicon Valley. They are focused on that, and they are just hungry for ideas. And I think that what we can work on as a community to just keep introducing each other to those groups, and excuse me, work on our pitch presentations, and just get out of our comfort zone and seek funding. I don't think that we are in a disadvantaged position being in Alaska, because to me, at least, for my project, COVID proved that we can do a lot of things from Alaska. If Kelly may remember, one of the critiques that I received on my first NIH submission was that, oh, you are in Alaska and your collaborators are in different parts of the country, and it was pre-COVID. And now we don't receive those comments because people now realize that you can do a lot still being in Alaska.
Thanks for that, Bahara. Yeah, and I'll make a comment to that as I wrap up, but I'll pass Adam back to make the final comment for the panelists before we wrap up today. So Adam, I saw your physical hand being raised, so I'll pass the mic to you before I finish.
Okay. Yeah, I love that question, Kelly, and thank you, Bahara, for that answer. It aligns exactly with where, as we've been building our T3 Alaska program, we recognize that creating pathways for that statewide entrepreneurial community, the ones who are connected to angel investors and the ones who are attuned to the, some of the issues and have the wherewithal to have the experience of what a design cycle and those kind of things, they exist in all of our different communities. And I see, Center Ice as being one of the connection hubs, but there's others in Alaska that might even be watching right now on this call. And as we learn to take programs like mine, which are a federally funded program with lots of restrictions on what I can and can't do, and figure out pathways for the innovation entrepreneurial community to step in and find a way to be of help, because I find that part of the same thing that drives a student wanting to innovate and make a difference in their community, that also exists within those who have achieved that hard, cycle of innovation and gotten to the other side and said, oh my gosh, this isn't that hard. You can do this too. Just believe in yourself and go that next step. So yeah, thank you, Kelly, for that. And thank you, Bahara, for that next level. And I look forward to where we are a year from now when we've all been able to work on different aspects of this. And I now want to learn about the pathways that you guys have been through, so that as I find myself in those hard times of, oh, there's so much to keep on top of, I can look and say, oh, look, in their examples, it worked. And ask you to be, guest speakers or inspirational folks who come in and share with students that I see either at the high school or first year, college experience, who are kind of at that beginning of that thing, looking out over the abyss going, man, can I make it? Am I going to have everything it takes? And then, that's our roles here. So thanks, Peter.
Thanks, Adam. And actually, I was making a note here is that when Bahara was mentioning about sort of getting Alaskan innovators and entrepreneurs known outside Alaska and even outside the Pacific Northwest, it takes people like Bahara, who's in an area like Seattle, that she's like, oh, I know about this person. I worked with them while I was in Alaska. I'm now out of the state physically in my location, but you should get introduced to that person. It's the sort of you think of the entrepreneurial journey and what we call the advocates. You've got the users, you've got the stakeholders, and then the advocates, people that are like, not as far as an influencer, but somebody that is an alumni of a university, or somebody that was connected to the research work, but is now in Texas or in Florida, and then hears about something, and you reach back and say, hey, Peter, we've got this potential opportunity here, and there's going to be an event. Who's developed the next top technology out there that we could connect into, and then get them to come and present at that event and pull them into the environment that they may not see in Alaska. The funding, whether it's federal funding, SBIR, venture capital, angel, they then look back up to Alaska to see everything else that's going on, because they've been exposed to that new opportunity that's coming from an Alaskan researcher, where you don't have to be physically in the location. You just have to have the opportunity to be there and present, whether it be virtual or in person. And often it's that connecting point that needs to happen. So people, as you're saying, Bahara, with Kelly and that opportunity, is because you know each other and you're like, oh, I'll make that connection. But sometimes if we can find other individuals that have transitioned out of Alaska and work out how to use their networks to bring Alaskan opportunities out into those wider environments. And I think that's some of the attendees online are from outside Alaska, and getting them to understand how they can use their networks to expand the opportunities for Alaskan entrepreneurs means entrepreneurs can stay in Alaska, but they can get access to these opportunities that they don't traditionally have locally in person. So thanks for all of that. So before we go, I just want to remind everybody that we're part of Alaska Startup Week. So today is Tuesday morning. You've just heard from awardees and those that we funded through the seed fund at Centre Ice. You can see here over the next 2 days, a lot of events going on: Anchorage, Seward, Wasilla, a few more in Fairbanks. Some of these are in person. The yellow ones, some of the blue ones that you see here are online, and the sort of red maroon colored ones are hybrid. So this, you can find out more information about those events at the Alaska Startup Week website that you see down at the bottom. We've got a number of sponsors that have helped events as part of Startup Week, whether they be in-kind support or financial support, and you see some of those listed here: Alaska EPSCoR, Launch Alaska, GCI, 49th State Angel Fund, and others. They've provided some financial support to allow events in person and also to support some of the online capabilities. So finally, I want to wrap up and thank our panelists today: Adam Lau, Teaching Through Technologies, Bahara Baradi, Sherry Umnazor, and Kelly Drew for their time and their insight into how the Seed Fund has supported them in some of the aspects of their work, and how we as a community can help more of these types of projects move forwards, and then thinking about what might be the next steps as we look to grow and scale as a state. So on that note, I'd like to wrap up today's webinar and remind you all that you can find this and other recordings from the Centre Ice events on our YouTube channel. And please do sign up and attend other events across the week, wherever you're able to make it. Thanks to our attendees, thanks to those listening afterwards, and I wish you all a good rest of the week. So thank you, everybody, and have a good week.
Thank you, Peter. Good to see everyone.